Hello, good morning.
Hello.
We're staying in Krakow in Poland, so we're heading out to visit the Auschwitz concentration camps today.
Which is about 70 kilometres out of town.
During World War II, over 1.3 million people were deported to the camps, and so the subsequent 1.1 million people died. We're not really sure what to expect, but we're going to go have a look. At the start of World War II in 1939, Hitler had already been dictator of Germany for 6 years, during which time the rights and freedoms were stripped of Jewish people and those considered racially inferior or politically volatile. Eventually, these groups of people were forced into concentration camps and labour camps. Auschwitz was the largest concentration camp created by the Nazi regime. One of the important things to understand is that it isn't a single location or structure. At its peak, Auschwitz became a complex of three main camps. Auschwitz I, which was the first concentration camp to be established, Birkenau, or Auschwitz II, which was a purpose-built killing centre, and Monowitz, or Auschwitz III, which was a labour camp. Over 40 more subcamps existed as the complex grew before its end in 1945. To visit now, you can access Auschwitz I and Birkenau to see what remains, which is about 155 structures and nearly 300 ruins, including gas chambers and crematoriums. We booked a standard tour which included bus transportation from Krakow and a guide of Auschwitz I and Birkenau, including transfers between the two locations. We began our tour at Auschwitz I, which was the first camp established in 1940 in an abandoned Polish army barrack. The first prisoners arrived at Auschwitz on May 20, 1940. Auschwitz inmates were forced to work in coal mines, stone quarries, fisheries, and especially in armament factories, like the SS-owned German Equipment Works and Oskar Schindler's enamel factory, where they were essential to the German war machine. As new prisoners arrived, they underwent selection. If the SS judged them too weak or sick to continue working, they were murdered. Auschwitz I is also the place where SS doctors carried out medical experiments in the hospital barrack that was housed in Block 10. They conducted vicious and unethical research on infants, twins, dwarfs, and performed forced sterilisations and castration of adults. The first part of the tour of Auschwitz I highlights the experiences of victims from being stripped of their personhood to what they faced as they were held in captivity. While there were murders and violations of human rights, the policy of mass extermination hadn't been decided on. By 1942, Europe was 3 years into World War II, and Germany was 9 years into Hitler's Nazi regime. Jews and other groups were being used for forced labour, experimented on, and were essential for the manufacturing of goods to support Germany at war. But for the rest, there wasn't a clear decision of what to do with the imprisoned Jews and other undesirables who were held in captivity in concentration camps. The uncertainty of what to do with prisoners and the remaining Jews of Europe was called the Jewish question. The decision for mass extermination in 1942 was called the final solution to that question, what we now know as the Holocaust. While mass murders were being carried out for years, these were conducted through firing squads, where victims were made to dig enormous graves and line up along the precipice, with the intention that once shot, the victim would fall into the pit that then became a mass grave. The SS idea was one focused on efficiency. However, the cost of bullets and logistics in this process was inefficient, and a better method needed to be developed. The SS conducted the first tests of the Zyklon B gas as a mass murder agent at Auschwitz I. They used Soviet prisoners of war and Polish prisoners as victims. The effectiveness of these experiments led to Auschwitz II, or Auschwitz-Birkenau, being constructed as a purpose-built killing centre, where Jews could be transported directly to Birkenau and there would be greater room to accomplish the murders of the 11 million they intended.
We've just finished visiting Auschwitz I, which was really confronting. A lot about the transportation of Jews and other groups of subjugated people into the camp, what their life was like here. It's just really confronting.
I think for me, and the most confronting parts you can't really film, so you won't see them from us, but there's a room where they've collected 2 tons of human hair that they harvested from these people to use for making clothing and things like that.
To repurpose and profit.
It was rough.
We're going to go to Birkenau now, which I think will be more details about the gas chambers themselves.
Where most of the killings happened.
Yeah.
Purpose-built crematoriums were constructed across several buildings within Birkenau to cope with the sheer number of intended victims. Each building was constructed with a gas chamber, a disrobing area, and crematory ovens. Jews and other marginalised groups from Germany and German-occupied Europe were deported by train directly to Auschwitz-Birkenau to be murdered. The Germans referred to deportations as resettlement to the east in an attempt to disguise what they were really doing. Trains arrived almost daily where the victims were told they were to be taken to labour camps, but the reality was that after 1942, when the final solution had been decided on, deportation for most victims meant transit to killing centres and their death. Of the 3 main camps of Auschwitz, the Birkenau camp had the largest total prisoner population. It was divided into 10 sections separated by electrified barbed wire fences and was patrolled by SS guard and dog handlers. While life across the Auschwitz complex was brutal, there are stories of defiance and resistance. Alla Gartner was a Polish Jew who was deported to Auschwitz. She was forced to work at an armament factory where she and other female prisoners stole explosives and gunpowder. They planned an uprising and in October 1944 set fire to and destroyed a crematorium, as well as killing 3 guards. Ultimately, the guards stopped the revolt, killing all prisoners involved, as well as publicly hanging Alla Gartner and the other female prisoners who she conspired with. In late 1944, the close of the war was upon Germany. The SS stopped gassing newly arrived prisoners and began dismantling the crematoriums. In early 1945, word that Soviet forces were approaching the camp complex spread, so the SS began evacuating Auschwitz and its subcamps. In the freezing January winter, SS units forced nearly 60,000 prisoners to march from the Auschwitz camp system before the Soviets could get there to liberate them. Thousands had been killed in the camps in the days before these death marches began, and those who were marched faced cold exposure and starvation. SS guards shot anyone who fell behind or could not continue. Of the 60,000 people, it's estimated that as many as 15,000 prisoners died during the evacuation marches from Auschwitz and the subcamps. It's estimated that the SS and police murdered at least 1.1 million people at the Auschwitz camp complex between 1940 and 1945. On January 22, 1945, the Soviet army entered Auschwitz, Birkenau and Monowitz and liberated about 7,000 prisoners, most of who were ill and dying. The remains of the 2 camps now at Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II Birkenau were inscribed on the World Heritage List as evidence of the inhumane, cruel and methodical effort to deny human dignity to groups considered inferior, leading to their systematic murder.
We've just finished our tour and we're heading back to the bus.
And it's bloody cold. Really, really, really cold here.
It's unfathomable to think about what life was like here for years on end. The people who were imprisoned and mostly murdered. And I just think how uncomfortable we are on these few hours that we spent touring around, and just
we're all rugged up.
how impossible it would have been is just impossible to imagine.
Yeah.
An important day, a hard one to experience. But I have been fortunate in some ways to come here before, but when I was a tour guide and when I was, it was warmer and the place is really green. It's very different now. The buildings that are here are mostly just last little bits and bobs. The original structures aren't here anymore. They were destroyed at the end of World War II. But when I was here, there was lots of young Jewish kids waving the Israeli flag, dancing on the train tracks, smiling and laughing and throwing roses. So there's something positive to take out of it, I suppose.
And those that don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. So this is the reasons we come to places like this.
And sharing it with you today.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to the guides at Auschwitz-Birkenau for an informative and moving experience.